And so tonight we have the pleasure of, as I said, Suzanne Begston, who is our Vice President of Family Supports at CaringKind. And Suzanne oversees all the programs and services here that are really available to family members and friends who are caring for those who are living with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. So that might be a spouse, that might be an adult child, that might be a partner, a friend, and our services, the helpline, our support groups, our coaching sessions, our consultations. Suzanne is over the staff that delivers all of those, and she'll be sharing a little bit more about those. So Suzanne comes to us with over 20 years of experience in aging and dementia services. She's worked as a memory care director and an executive director in residential services and as a medical social worker and community home health care and hospice. And so she brings a wealth of experience to this conversation this evening. And without further ado, I will turn the conversation over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Yes, as Stephanie mentioned, my name is Suzanne, and I'm very happy to welcome everyone tonight to this second part series, the second part of this series of Understanding Dementia. As Stephanie mentioned, this one is going to focus on adjusting to the diagnosis and any kind of ongoing life changes that brings along. So before I dive in, I just want to level set with everybody, assuming that most of the participants here are here because they're dealing with somebody who is has been diagnosed with a dementia, but I just want to make sure that we understand what that means. So dementia is an umbrella term, as you can see on the slide. The most common form of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. When you have a diagnosis, you lose brain function, and that affects your thinking, remembering, reasoning, to the point where it interferes with your daily life. The most common form, I said, is Alzheimer's, but there are some other common forms that you see under the umbrella there, which is frontal temporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, and the dementia of Parkinson's disease. And then on the other side, the two most common ones after Alzheimer's are vascular dementia and dementia with Lewy bodies. Alzheimer's disease and related dementias are considered what we call a neurodegenerative disease, meaning that they affect the brain, and they cause the cells of the brain, the neurons, to get sick and die, which results in gradual shrinkage of the brain, therefore degenerative. Other common neurodegenerative diseases can include Parkinson's disease, ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, and Huntington's disease. And where the neurons die and the brain shrinks, someone with that disease progressively loses both brain and body functions, and functions that cannot be relearned or regained, making them more and more dependent on others for their day-to-day care. So I wanted to share this slide because President Carter's wife started the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregivers, grounded in the philosophy that it's crucial to prioritize family caregivers beyond the specific issue or health condition of those in their care. Obviously, tonight we are focusing on dementia, but what Mrs. Carter famously said is that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. I just want to add that here at CaringKind, we like to use the word care partner and not caregiver. And the reason for that is because a caregiver gives care, while a care partner partners in care. And we think that's an important, it may seem trivial, but we think it's an important distinction. Because it can create a powerful shift in the mindset of your role, resulting in an improved relationship between you and the person that you partner in care with. So looking at this slide, getting a diagnosis can be devastating, overwhelming, scary. And why is getting a diagnosis important? A diagnosis is essential to rule out other conditions that may have symptoms similar to dementia and that may be treatable. These could include depression, UTIs, urinary tract infections, severe constipation, vitamin and thyroid deficiencies, and brain tumors. Getting a diagnosis is also important because you can access advice, information, and support to help manage each stage. You can allow the person with dementia and the care partner to prepare for and plan for the future. You can benefit from services that have been developed to maintain a good quality of life. And you can give the person an opportunity to take part in research of future treatments or best practices of care. Currently, there's no simple test to make a diagnosis. It is often difficult, particularly in the early stages. It can be made by taking a careful history of the person's problem from the person or a close relative. It can be done together with an examination of the person's physical and mental status. Currently, there's some blood tests being developed that may be able to detect biomarkers for dementia. There are brain scans, and then there's an overview of the person and their care partner. And an overview of the person and their care partner are common steps prior to diagnosis. So when someone you love or care about is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease or a related dementia, you may find that your life will be profoundly impacted by and changed by caring for them on their dementia journey. So in this webinar, we will discuss some of the strategies and some of the skills you can develop in order to navigate the journey with less distress, as well as a greater understanding of how to adapt to your new role. Chances are, when you first receive the diagnosis, that you'll feel overwhelmed. You will experience an emotional reaction. You will need to learn more. You will need to start thinking about what that is going to look like, what a care plan is going to look like as the disease progresses, and you will need to adapt to changes. So a little bit about getting a diagnosis. There's a lot of stigma associated with getting a dementia diagnosis. We know that today, more than 6 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease or related dementia, and that number is projected to skyrocket in the coming years. According to the Milken Institute, stigma associated with Alzheimer's disease often prevent people from seeking a cognitive assessment when symptoms arise. There are some discrepancies pertaining to fact versus perception. There are some discrepancies between the realities of dementia and the overall feelings about the diagnosis. A 2019 study by the Alzheimer's Disease International, published in Medical News Today, surveyed 70,000 people in 155 different countries, and here are some of their findings. Attitudes towards dementia has shown that 2/3 of people believe it to be a natural risk of getting older, which could be limiting the help that people seek. Additionally, 62% of healthcare professionals believe that dementia is a normal part of aging. And only 16% of people are getting regular cognitive assessments, even though early diagnosis can help. So stigma could be restricting people from getting advice, medical assistance, and support that could help them to live well with dementia for as long as possible. The study also found that 35% of carers or care partners hide the diagnosis of dementia in family members from others. So what the report confirmed is that stigma and negative attitudes around dementia exists in every setting, although this may present itself in many different ways. Researchers found that almost 48% of the survey respondents believe that the memory of somebody with dementia will never improve, even with medical help, while a quarter of respondents felt that there's no way to prevent this disease from developing. So 1 in 5 people, 1 in 5 adults, 19%, said that they would feel ashamed or embarrassed if they had dementia. and a staggering 7 in 10 providers, medical providers, said that their patients would feel ashamed or embarrassed. So we know that there's a lot of stigma surrounding the disease, surrounding getting a diagnosis, and we know that it is one of the most feared conditions, diseases in the US. So when you first learn as a care partner about the diagnosis, it may be difficult for you to think about how you're going to manage that, how you're going to manage the day-to-day responsibilities of caregiving. Chances are that you are afraid, not only for the person that has the diagnosis, but for yourself as well. According to the Milken Institute, again, adults in the US fear Alzheimer's disease more than cancer, stroke, and heart disease combined. So when you first learn about the diagnosis, and you're probably feeling confused and overwhelmed and afraid, the symptoms of the person you're caring for may be poor memory or getting lost when driving at this particular time early on in the disease process. And yet the doctor tells you that the person you're caring for may live 8 to 10 years and that they will eventually need to be in diapers, lose the ability to walk, and need help eating. And that is extremely tough to process. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with emotion, you might also be overwhelmed by the roles and responsibilities you have as a care partner. This is understandable. So sometimes it would be necessary or recommendable to see a health professional. So if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed beyond what you think you can handle, for example, resorting to using alcohol and drugs to calm yourself down, or if you're having feelings of harming yourself or your loved one with dementia, we highly recommend that you contact a medical doctor, a counselor, or a therapist, or call one of the resources available 24/7, which of course is 911, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, which is 988. There's a live online instant messaging crisis line that's called IAMA Live, I'm Alive. And then, of course, CaringKind, where we can connect you with one of our social workers, one of our navigators, one of our professionals that can talk to you about how to process the diagnosis and maybe suggest some programs and that can help you. So, talking about emotions, the personal and emotional stress of caring for somebody living with a dementia not only affects the person with dementia, it affects the entire family. The greatest responsibility is placed on you, the care partner. The personal and emotional stresses of caring for a person are enormous, and you will need to plan for ways of coping with the disease for the future. Understanding your own emotions will help you successfully cope with the person's problems as well as your own. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest, strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown, someone said. Human beings basically have 4 basic emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, and anger. Other emotions are variations of these core emotions. How you express your emotions depends on a number of different factors, such as your personality, how your childhood family shared their feelings, and the life experiences you've had. Here are some of the typical emotions that I hear my care partners mention in some of the support groups that I run: overwhelmed, anxious, confused, depressed, distraught, helpless, hopeless, irritable, guilty, lonely, resentful, terrified. Now, as I'm talking, try to take a moment and think about one emotion that you are feeling the most right now. And if you don't mind sharing, you can write it in the chat or you can save it for later, for when we meet in the Q&A. But please be aware that the person with the dementia, as well as other family members and friends, may also be experiencing the same emotions. So here are some of the challenges that you might experience as a care partner. So care partners occupy a very critical place in the healthcare system for people with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. In fact, they are very often the center of the system, or in other words, the non-system. It's the care that they provide that keeps the person in the community for as long as possible. Care partners have to adapt to constant changes. There's a change of role. Care partners are often unprepared and untrained for their new role, and they must adapt and acquire knowledge, skills, and an attitude that it takes to be able to do the work and to be successful at it. There's a change of relationship. The most typical relationship change between the care partner and the person living with the dementia is an increase in the emotional distance between yourself as a care partner and the person with the dementia. In psychological terms, we call that a weakening of what we refer to as attachment bonds. There's a change of environment. The demands of caregiving or care partnering may become unmanageable to the point where you cannot care for the person with the dementia at home, and you may need to consider residential care. Or you may not be able to provide all of the care yourself, and you may need to hire professional caregivers to help. Then there's a change of family and social dynamics. We know that many care partners feel lonely and isolated. They may feel a lack of support from family and friends. And care partners are often so overwhelmed with the responsibility of caregiving that they tend to neglect their own needs, including social interactions. They withdraw from society. And often that leads to a sense of a shrinking world as the disease progresses. There are other challenges. There are the challenges of grief and loss, losing the person, loss of peace of mind, grief and mourning. So losing the person, we call that ambiguous loss because the person is physically present in your life, in front of you, and yet they're absent in mind and perhaps in spirit. And as a care partner, you may feel the loss of a parent or spouse or companion, and you've had to take on 100% of the responsibilities of managing their life and your life. Then there's loss of peace of mind. As a care partner to someone with a dementia, you may constantly worry, and sometimes the worry can be overwhelming. Grief refers to the internal thoughts and feelings you have related to the dementia. And mourning is the outward expression. We call the mourning the outward expression of your grief. That's how you show what you're thinking and feeling. And there. So how can you prepare for the ongoing changes? So caring for a person with dementia can be a rewarding experience, assuming that, it's somebody you love and you want to take good care of them and you want to give them the best life possible given the diagnosis. But caring for a person with dementia can also be very challenging. As the dementia progresses, the person may show changes that you weren't expecting. Caring for the person with dementia can have high physical, emotional, and financial costs, both for the person with the dementia and for the caregiver. And the day-to-day care needs and decisions that need to be made about, for instance, getting aides into the home or residential placement can be very, very difficult. We know that being a dementia care partner is a marathon, not a sprint. So you have to be able to adjust to constant changes. The journey is not just about the person living with the disease. It's also about you, the care partner. As a care partner, if your brain and body are not in a good place to support the individual, then your life and their life will not be what they could be. Care partners are under a tremendous amount of stress. Not only do they have to deal with the day-to-day reality of the situation, making sure the person gets safely and securely through the day and hopefully pleasantly, they are also dealing with their own feelings of sadness, loss, and disappointment. Care partners typically have to take on responsibilities both within the family, becoming the chief financial officer as well as a full-time laundry person and housekeeper, and outside of the family. They come to manage all of the boundaries between the person and various institutions, doctors, nurses, bankers, lawyers, etc. And they're faced with the added financial pressures, maybe having to spend the hard-earned money that they saved on providing care. And very often they also are the center of the cyclone of a family system, trying to deal with a situation that they don't understand and that they don't want. So taking steps to improve your physical and mental health as a care partner, so you'll be able to offer support as effectively as possible, is key. It's also essential to make certain that you have emotional support for the journey. And if you do not have family or friends that can provide this for you, then consider joining a local caregiver support group that we have here. See a therapist, or often faith-based communities is another possible resource. Again, it's never too early to get support. So information and knowledge is really key. Many care partners are in denial. Many care partners simply do not have their facts straight about what it is they're dealing with, but knowledge is power. In the early stages, we recommend that you try to establish routines, but you keep things normal. A routine can decrease the decisions you will need to make and bring order and structure into an otherwise confused daily life. A routine may come to represent security for the person with dementia. And although a routine can be helpful, it is important to keep things as normal as possible. As much as that changing condition will allow, try to treat the person as you did before the disease. Support their independence. It's important that the person remains independent for as long as possible. It helps to maintain self-respect and decreases the burden for you. Resist the temptation to step in and do everything for them. Adapt activities so the person can still do them for as long as possible. For example, if the person wants to cook, assist them in the kitchen. Let them do small tasks that add up to the accomplishment of making a meal. And while this may be more time-consuming, the person will feel valued and included, and it may be a regular activity that you can enjoy together. Also, you need to take care of you. It's important to take a good look in the mirror and think about some self-care skills. We know for a fact that caregivers tend to neglect themselves, neglect their doctor's appointments, neglect their social engagements, neglect family time, simply because they're so overwhelmed and there's not enough hours in the day. So try to do these following things. So physical self-care. Physical well-being is the cornerstone of self-care. That means getting adequate sleep, getting regular exercise, eating a balanced diet. It's also establishing a consistent sleep routine, engaging in physical activities that bring joy, and fueling the body with nutritious foods are all foundational aspects of physical self-care. You have to acknowledge your emotions. Care partnering for someone with a dementia can elicit a range of emotions that we already spoke about, from love and fulfillment to frustration and sadness. And it's crucial for caregivers to recognize and validate these emotions, to seek support from family and friends or support group to share your feelings and experiences. Very early on, it's a good idea to start thinking about your extended support system. Emotional and mental self-care. Caring for your mental and emotional health is equally vital. Practices such as mindfulness, meditation, journaling, and seeking professional counseling can be avenues for self-reflection and emotional release. Developing resilience, managing stress, and cultivating a positive mindset contribute significantly to mental and emotional well-being. And learning how to delegate, recognizing that it's okay to delegate tasks, that friends and family or hired help can assist with certain responsibilities, giving you time to focus on your own needs. Taking breaks and resting. Caregivers often feel guilty about taking breaks, but self-care necessitates time for rest and relaxation. Arranging for respite care to allow yourself a break, to go for a walk, to rejuvenate your mind and body. Also, to set boundaries. To establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries is a key aspect of self-care. This involves learning to say no when necessary, recognizing personal limits, creating space for oneself. By setting boundaries, individuals protect their time and energy, fostering a healthier balance between personal and professional life. Social connections. Building and maintaining a meaningful social connections is a powerful self-care strategy. Spending time with loved ones, fostering positive relationships, and seeking support when needed. Social connections act as a buffer against stress and provide a support system during challenging times. Educate yourself. We know that knowledge is power. Take time to educate yourself about dementia and its progression. Understanding the challenges and potential issues that may arise can help you anticipate and navigate them more effectively. And finally, engaging in hobbies, pursuing and holding on to the interests that you have and the activities that bring you joy and fulfillment. Whether it's reading, painting, gardening, or playing a musical instrument, engaging in activities that align with personal interest fosters a sense of purpose and satisfaction. Now, this is easier said than done, but it's also a good idea if care partners can start adapting a new outlook. If care partners can become less emotionally involved, at least when they are trying to solve a caregiving problem, believing that they can do the work that they have chosen to do, and learning how to value and appreciate their own efforts. So try to think and act like a professional care partner and not a relative or friend. It's beneficial for care partners to become more analytical and experimental in their caregiving. It's beneficial for caregivers to be able to step back from a situation, to examine it objectively and dispassionately to see what just transpired was the best way of solving the problem. It's beneficial for caregivers to put the observation together with other knowledge that they have obtained and to make a plan for how to solve the problem. And as care partners grow their skills, they will become more confident in their role. And care partners should learn how to value their work and efforts and to give themselves some credit. We work a lot with Dr. Ed Shore, who has started a memory counseling center down at Wake Forest. And he's written a book called the Dementia Care Partners Workbook that we use a lot in some of our groups, some of our psychoeducational groups. And Dr. Shaw talks a lot about the 8 central needs of care partners. And they're here on the slide. I'm going to go through them a little bit one by one. Number 1, being a care partner is stressful. It's lonely. It's isolating. So being able to talk to others about your experience is important. It helps you unburden yourself about the things that you're going through. Number 2, we have a natural fear of the unknown. So learning about the disease will give you a better understanding of symptoms, and it will make you a more informed, empathetic, and effective care partner. Dementia is a progressive disease that causes changes in behavior and in your relationship, requiring you to adapt. You will experience grief and loss just as someone who experiences a death. So personal losses, relationship losses, and the loss of peace of mind is something that to keep in mind, something to talk about. Being a dementia care partner is stressful. The physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of it place you at a risk for medical problems such as depression and anxiety and social isolation. Most care partners try to do everything on their own, and they are reluctant to ask for help from others. It's okay to ask for help, and many people want to be part of the care team. So the person living with dementia will transition through the early, middle, and late stages. Some changes are anticipated and can be planned for, but one of the most difficult changes are the hard-to-manage behaviors that late-stage dementia can bring on. Those can be agitation, aggression, hallucinations, incontinence, resisting care, sundowning, and wandering, because they require you to get more help or to consider a transition to residential care. And finally, inevitably, when somebody develops a terrible disease like dementia, it's common to ask, why is this happening to me? And Dr. Shaw talks about meaning reconstruction. So deconstructing the concept and then try to find some meaning with being a dementia care partner. So a little bit more about knowledge. I've said it a few times now, we naturally fear the unknown. And dementia, because it's feared more than cancer or any other disease, is something that many of us know very little about. So learning about the disease and related dementias, as well as how it develops and affects the brain over time, and as a result, the many challenges of care partnering, will give you a better understanding of the person with dementia symptoms and behaviors, and in turn will make you a more informed, empathetic, and effective care partner. Many care partners do not have enough information and knowledge. They don't understand or accept that they're dealing with a progressive disease that has no cure. They don't have a clear understanding of how the disease progresses and the impact it has on the person living with it. They don't realize that the disease progresses in stages and that the different stages has great relevance for the strategies related to caregiving. And finally, they very often do not have enough information about the impact of caregiving on themselves. So I want to talk a little bit about relationship changes. I mentioned it earlier, but the most typical relationship change that happens when you're caring for somebody with a dementia is that there's an increase in the emotional distance between you as a care partner and the person with the disease. So in psychological terms, we call that a weakening of the attachment bonds. We know from attachment theory that children who feel securely attached are able to interact with strangers and not feel threatened. They can be separate from their parents without feeling anxious, and they can explore new situations without being fearful. Additionally, securely attached children are confident, they have positive self-esteem, they are more socially connected, they form numerous long-lasting bonds with attachment throughout their lifetime, including parents and siblings, extended family, friends, co-workers, spouses, partners, even their own children. Insecurely attached children, on the other hand, feel threatened by strangers, anxious when not with their parents, and fearful in new situations. They lack confidence, they have low self-esteem, they are more isolated, and they struggle with forming relationships in childhood and adulthood. They are more likely to feel emotional distress when separated from attachment figures, also known as separation distress. So then you can ask yourselves, what does this have to do with dementia? But the fact is that dementia by its very nature creates insecurely attached adults. It causes people with dementia to feel disoriented, overstimulated, fearful, and anxious in many environments, feeling unattached to those who are closest to them, and even detached from reality. Because the neurons in the brain are damaged and dying, they in essence mimic or create the illusion of insecure attachment, and in doing so, cause separation behaviors that may further widen the emotional divide between you and the person you're caring for. So adapting to the changing relationship and learning skills. Dementia progresses over time, as we know, and it will affect the person's ability to perform daily functions. Learning about the changes that dementia can cause, so you have realistic expectations of the person's disease, is beneficial. Asking the person how you can help them stay independent and maintaining a sense of autonomy is important. One tip we often hear from care partners is that though it isn't always easy, it helps to be patient. And patient is one of the most important skills you can have as a dementia care partner. So if your patience is wearing thin because of repetitive questioning, repetitive behaviors, repetitive stories, or any number of challenging dementia symptoms, the good thing to know is that patience is a skill, and a skill can be improved. Patience is one of the most important skills you can have as a dementia care partner. If you're not naturally a patient person, or if understandably your patience has been wearing thin because of the repetitive questions or the repetitive behaviors, the good news is that you can teach yourself to become better at it. So remember that when a person with dementia asks you the same question 10 times within a very short period of time, every time they ask that question, for them, it's the first time. So patience, if you can handle it with patience, you will be able to improve your relationship with the person living with the dementia. The continuation of adapting to the changing relationship. There are more skills that you can learn. You can avoid confrontation. You can affirm, acknowledge, and redirect. You can keep it short, simple, and safe. And you can use what we call fiblets or therapeutic fibbing. So I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about that. Confrontation or any type of conflict that causes unnecessary stress on you or the person with the dementia is not beneficial. So avoid drawing attention to failure and maintain a calm composure, if at all possible. Becoming upset can only make the situation worse. Remember that it's a disease and it's not the person's fault. So affirm, acknowledge, and redirect. So this is a strategy that can be very helpful when the drama level increases, and it involves 3 easy to remember steps: affirming, acknowledging, and redirecting. So for example, when the person with dementia experiences a paranoid delusion, maybe regarding infidelity or being harmed by somebody or something else, they can become upset, extremely upset, and say and do things that can increase the drama level, and very often leaving you as a care partner uncertain how to manage the situation. So instead of just ignoring it, it is better to affirm that the situation is going on, acknowledge the situation rather than ignoring it. You can say something like, I noticed that you have become very upset. Do you want to talk to me about it? You can affirm that you're there for them to support them. And then you can try, if they calm down, or once they've calmed down, you can try to redirect that person to a different activity, like shifting their thoughts to something a little bit more positive and pleasant. Also, keeping it short, simple, and safe. So having realistic expectations for what the person with dementia can do, and try to prevent them from getting too tired, emotional, or overwhelmed. Strive to keep activities short, simple, and safe. In the early stages of the disease, the person may be able to dress themselves, but as the disease progresses, you will need to guide them. So for example, you can offer 2 choices of clothing and let the person choose, and then lay out the clothing in the order it needs to be put on, and instructing the person 1 step at a time. So eventually you will need to clothe the person yourself, but until then, simplifying tasks will make it easier for them to clothe themselves or dress themselves. And then there's the concept of therapeutic fibbing or fiblets, or what I like to call it, a kind lie. So there are times as a care partner when it's easier to not tell the truth. In the world of dementia care partner, that is called a fiblet. And some people are more comfortable with them than others. A fiblet may be for the person with dementia's benefit. It can be something like, let's say they go to the doctor for a checkup, something that they usually resist. Instead, you may say, let's go out to lunch today, and just happen to stop at the doctor along the way. Fiblets may be a benefit for you too. If the person with dementia is Velcro to your hip and you need some downtime, you can say, I'll be gone for a few hours running errands, when you're really on your way to the gym or to grab a coffee with a friend. So that way you avoid the potential for words of conflict or confusion that might arise if you were actually being truthful. I want to talk a little bit about, some people say that people with a dementia can have behaviors. We prefer to call it an unmet need or an unmet want. And some of the unmet needs and wants that that people with a dementia may experience, and that they may not be able to express is they may be hungry or thirsty, they may be tired or overstimulated, they may have to go to the bathroom, they may be feeling uncomfortable. I mean, their clothing could be too tight, or maybe they're not situated right, not lying right, not sitting right, and then there can be pain that they're not able to express. Some unmet emotional needs could be anger, sadness, loneliness, fear, boredom, and some psychosocial unmet needs could be lack of comfort, lack of compassion, lack of something to do, lack of occupational attachment, lack of identity, lack of inclusion. We don't call that a behavior. So have you ever completely blanked on a name or couldn't find the right words to say? It's embarrassing, frustrating, and a bit scary. These are everyday occurrences for somebody who's living with a dementia. Over time, those with dementia lose their words and they can't tell others what they want or need. Many causes of distress come from unmet needs that are deeper than physical needs. People often find it much more difficult to verbalize unmet needs that are not physical. So you need to look deeper than their words. Pain and discomfort can take many forms. Emotional pain and spiritual pain can often cause distress, as can a lack of purpose, spending too much time waiting, not being cognitively stimulated, or not having productive and enjoyable ways to fill the days. Notice what the individuals enjoy socially, and seek those opportunities. What sensory activities do they enjoy, and what is overstimulating for them? Dementia can interfere with a person's activities of daily living and daily functioning and behavior in many ways. So memory loss, unable to immediately recall new memories, current events and relationships, language and comprehension, loss of ability to express oneself and interpret messages, sensory changes, changes to sight and depth perception, noise perception, information overload, and changes to touch, smell, and taste, and impulse behavior control of emotions diminishes greatly. So unmet wants and needs may aggravate these factors, causing the person living with dementia to behave in unpredictably and become anxious, frustrated, or aggressive. They lack communication skills. They may wander. They may use inappropriate language or lash out. And when challenging behaviors occur, care partners need to explore some possible causes to explain these behaviors. These causes might just be unmet wants and needs. Many causes of distress come from unmet needs that are deeper than physical needs. People often find it more difficult to verbalize those that are not physical. And then the emotional pain that can often cause distress, that can come as a result of lack of purpose, spending too much time waiting, not being stimulated, and not having productive ways to fill the days. Sorry, I'm just gonna grab a sip of water. Sorry about that. So as Stephanie mentioned, next week, there's going to be a presentation on care partnering in various stages of the disease. And the 4 stages that we refer to are mild cognitive impairment, or MCI, early stage dementia, middle stage dementia, and late stage dementia. So I'm only going to mention it briefly here. In the MCI stage, the person with the dementia is able to perform their activities of daily living well enough that they can be well enough that to somebody who observes them, they may seem quite normal. But to the people who know them well, it seems as if the cognitive function may be slipping. So what you might notice in that stage is forgetfulness, difficulty learning or retaining new information, repeated questions or stories, losing train of thought, entering a room but forgetting why, misplacing keys, and having a noticeable change in performance at work or home, less focused, more disorganized, easily overwhelmed. In the early stage of the disease, the person may need some assistance with some of what we call instrumental activities of daily living. So what you might notice is still the repeated questions and stories, forgetting conversations, frequently misplacing things, having difficulties with cooking, house cleaning, laundry, paying bills, taking medications correctly, getting lost while driving, possibly, being disorganized while grocery shopping and forgetting items, even with a list, experiencing difficulty finding the right word at times, and having trouble planning, problem solving, and multitasking. In the middle stages, typically the person cannot be left home alone safely and will require one or several care partners. What you might notice in that stage is repeat questions over and over, show little interest or in current events and recent events, recall long-term memories but not short-term memories, may not recognize grandchildren or infrequently seen family members or friends, become unable to cook, clean house, pay bills, take medication, or drive, require some assistance in picking out clothes as well as getting dressed, occasional episodes of incontinence. They may need assistance with bathing and eating, for instance, cutting meat. They may appear apathetic and unmotivated, and they may be sundowning, which is a symptom that can occur in the afternoon and evening when the brain has been overstimulated, and it can lead to confusion and agitation and paranoia. There can be delusions or hallucinations. There can be obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. And the person tends to sleep a lot, sometimes up to 12 hours per day. And there can be personality and mood changes. And then in the late stages of the dementia, which is characterized by a severe impairment in multiple cognitive functions, the person becomes progressively dependent in all of the activities of daily living. They will be unable to cook, clean, do laundry, pay bills, drive, take medicine, etc. They will need progressively more help and eventually need full assistance in getting dressed, bathing, eating, and getting up from the bed or the chair. They might be incontinent. They will be mostly unaware and unresponsive to their surroundings, and they will not be able to express themselves, walk, or swallow towards the end. So think a little bit about your approach as a care partner. It's a complex job being a care partner, and it entails a lot of skills. And very few care partners have received any training for the work that they do. Since the principal task of being a care partner is to manage the day-to-day life with the person with the dementia, the skills that I'm going to mention now are needed to be a successful care partner. If you can help make the best of the person's existing abilities, if you can plan activities that can enhance the person's sense of dignity and self-worth by giving purpose and a meaning to life, a person, for instance, who was once a homemaker, gardener, doctor, or business executive may gain satisfaction from maintaining abilities related to their previous profession. Remember, however, that because the dementia is progressive, the person's likes, dislikes, and abilities may change over time. This will require you as a care partner to be observant and flexible in planning activities. The activities of daily living require the cognitive functions of paying attention, remembering, multitasking, listening and speaking, and visual spatial orientation. They are divided into the more complex activities of daily living called instrumental activities of daily living and the basic activities of daily living. And the degree of the activity of daily living impairment is directly related to the stage of dementia that the person is in. Let's see. Try to maintain communication. As the disease progresses, communication between yourself and the person can become more difficult. It may be helpful if you can make sure that the person's senses are not impaired. Eyesight, hearing, you should be checked. You should speak clearly, slowly, and face to face and at eye level. You should show love and warmth by showing affection, if this is comfortable for the person. You should pay attention to the person's body language. People who have impaired language communicate through nonverbal means, as we spoke about before with the unmet needs. Be aware of your own body language. Find out what combination of word reminders or prompting words, guidance, and demonstration is needed to communicate effectively with the person. And make sure you have the person's attention before speaking. Treat the person with dignity and respect. No matter how dementia affects an individual, it's essential to treat them with dignity and respect. Although certain abilities may change, their emotions, their feelings will remain, as will the need for companionship and a sense of belonging. So we talk a little bit about the love languages. People, I don't know if anybody has heard of the 5 love languages, but people tend to have a different way of expressing their love. Some people prefer words of affirmation, unsolicited compliments, and words of kindness and appreciation. Some people express their love through quality time when you give someone your full and undivided attention. Some people like gifts or gift giving. Some people prefer acts of service, meaningful, helpful acts performed by somebody else to lighten the load. And some people prefer physical touch. The touch of another person conveys their presence, their love, and their appreciation. So how will you know what the love language of the person with dementia you are caring for is? You can ask yourself these 3 questions. How did they most naturally or most often express their love to you? What did they complain about that you didn't do to express your love or appreciation for them? And what did they request of you to make them feel more loved or appreciated? Those 3 questions should help you zoom in on the person's love language. It's also important to be able to grieve your losses. Being a dementia care partner might be one of the loneliest and most isolating experiences of your life. You might feel desolate. You might feel that your world is shrinking. You might find that friendships become more distant or fade away. So I want to talk a little bit about the different types of grief. So grief are your internal thoughts and feelings related to the diagnosis of dementia, your role as a care partner, and the journey you are on, both with the disease and the person with the disease. Your grief is everything you think and feel about your experience. It's the disbelief you may have, having learned about the diagnosis. That's grief. The anger, the sadness that you may feel because the disease is incurable and terminal, and that's also grief. And when you're physically hurt on the inside because you're so worried about how you're going to meet the needs of everyone who depends on you, that's also grief. Anticipatory grief is the awareness that the person you're caring for has a progressive, incurable disease. So at some level, you're anticipating that their progressive cognitive and physical decline, as well as their eventual death and the grief associated with it. Ambiguous loss is the experience of having the person you're caring for essentially present right in front of you, but absent in mind and spirit. They may no longer recognize you as husband, wife, son, or daughter, brother or sister, relative or friend. And the loss feels ambiguous because they're right in front of you, but they have no idea who you are. And then mourning, that is how you express your grief. It's how you show what you're thinking, what you're feeling on the inside. And when you talk to a trusted family member or friend about how you're feeling, that's mourning. When you scream at God or punch the wall in anger, that's mourning too. I'm going to talk a little bit about losses, the losses that care partners may experience. There are personal losses, loss of time and freedom, loss of personal health, loss of occupation, loss of social activities and recreation. You will no longer have the autonomy to do what you want to do and when you want to do it. You might not be able to meet your own medical and mental health needs, including basic necessities such as eating and sleeping. The ability to pursue or maintain your vocation, as well as satisfaction and income you get from working, or if you're retired or don't have a job, the ability to participate in activities of your choice. Social activities and recreation, the ability to spend time with family, with friends, to pursue your hobbies and other activities. Those may be losses that you will experience, that you will not be able to maintain all of those things or still do all of those things that you enjoy. Some common emotions, we already spoke about grief, but some other common ones are guilt, anger, embarrassment, and loneliness. It's common for care partners to feel guilty for being embarrassed at a person's behavior, for feeling anger at the person, for feeling that you can't carry on. And you might feel guilty about considering placing the person in a nursing home. And you may find it helpful to talk to other care partners and friends about your feelings. Anger, your anger may be mixed. It may be directed at the person or yourself or the doctor or the situation, all depending on the circumstances. It's important to distinguish between your anger at the person's behavior, which is a result of the disease, and your anger with the person. You can get advice from friends, family, or support group. Sometimes people feel so angry that they're in danger of hurting the person they care for. If you feel like this, you must seek professional help. You may find yourself taking on the person's responsibilities, such as paying bills, housekeeping, cooking, and the increase of responsibilities can be very stressful. And it may be helpful to talk over your feelings with other family members or a professional. You may feel embarrassed when the person displays inappropriate behavior in public. The embarrassment may fade if you share these feelings with other care partners who are experiencing similar occurrences. It also helps to give explanations about the illness to friends and neighbors so that they will better understand the person's behaviors. And then loneliness. Many care partners withdraw from society and they're confined in and around their homes together with the person living with the dementia. Being a care partner can be very lonely. You may lose companionship with the person, you will lose companionship with the person that you're caring for, but you may also lose other social contacts due to the demands of being a caregiver. And loneliness can make it really hard to cope with the problems of caring. It's helpful to make it a priority to maintain friendships, to keep social contacts, to maybe join a support group. On this slide, I want to talk a little bit about growing around grief. So this slide is an illustration of the grieving process. The top line illustrates how we used to think that grief would be resolved. We used to say, time will heal all wounds. I don't think we believe that now. Look at the bottom graphic on the bottom line. This is what we believe now. If you've ever felt your grief was not shrinking, but rather that you were just learning to live with it and for your life to grow with and around it, this may be the theory that you will associate with. You go to new places, you meet new people, you try new things. You may not want to, but life gives you little choice. The grief is still there, but your life is expanding around it. As Robert Frost famously said, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. So figuring out a way for your life to grow around the grief, but not to expect the grief to go away. To still be able to do things that are enjoyable, to go to a movie, to enjoy a chocolate cake, to laugh at funny jokes. That is how your grief your life can grow around your grief. a little bit about stress and self-care. Compared to non-caregivers, dementia care partners are more likely to experience fatigue, frustration, despair, depression, anxiety, insomnia, medical problems, and marital strain. Some symptoms of caregiver stress are denial about the diagnosis, anger at the person with dementia, withdrawal from friends and pleasurable activities, anxiety about the future, depression that breaks your spirit and affects your ability to cope, exhaustion that makes it impossible or difficult for you to complete your daily tasks, sleeplessness caused by never-ending list of concerns, irritability and moodiness that trigger negative words and actions, lack of concentration that makes it difficult to perform familiar tasks, and health problems that begin to take a physical and mental toll. It's not a secret that caregivers often don't outlive the person living with the dementia because of the stress associated with being a care partner and because they fail to take good care of themselves. So this slide is taken from the wellness wheel. And I think I want to say about that it's important to create a wellness plan. What can you do to take care of yourself? If you have a wellness routine, if there's something you want to share, feel free to add it to the chat. The most important aspects of the wellness wheel are physical health, mental health, social relationships, and spiritual health. If others are more meaningful to you, try to include those in your wellness plan. But the most important thing you can do to yourself, you can do to promote a self-care and wellness plan, is to make and take time to do it. You must be very intentional about creating time for self-care and wellness. Also, try to work on assembling a caregiving team. Dementia caregiving is a team sport. You will need to recruit members to your team. You will need to be intentional and proactive about recruiting members. People often say, "Oh, let me know if you need some help. You know, I'm happy to help. Call me if there's anything that I can do." But I encourage you to be bold and to share what you need and to ask for help. Most people are much better at serving than being served. And now is the time for you to receive the grace that others extend you. So ask somebody for a specific thing that they can do for you to lighten the load. Can they come over and cook dinner once a week? Can they come and sit with the person living with a dementia for a couple of hours so that you can do something else? Instead of letting them say, "What can I do to help?" Be very specific about what you can ask of them. Let's see. Oh, that is kind of the end of the slides. This is an outline of the services that my department, the Family Supports Department, offer. We have the helpline. We have a Wanderer Safeties program. We have support groups. We have what's called Partnering Together, which is a workshop psychoeducational group that kind of turns into a support group. We have education workshops, and we have one-on-one coaching services. And now I think we'll go to the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Lots of information, wealth of information actually that you've shared tonight. I appreciate you ending with that slide about caregiving being a team sport, because it is something, you alluded to it earlier. It's not something that, that we're trained for. And I think particularly, as we're, as spouses or even as adult children or partners, we tend to relate to each other on a very cognitive level. Our conversations with each other are based in cognition as we organize our day. what we're going to do, how we're going to spend our time, all of those are grounded in cognitive abilities that change with the various types of dementia, and that does actually, certainly cause relationship changes and all kind of the emotional responses that you so clearly outlined. Um, I just want to encourage folks in the room, if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. If you have a question that you'd like to ask Suzanne, you can go ahead and uh, take yourself, off video, and we can, certainly call on you. We don't want to put anybody on the spot, but we want to give you the opportunity. If you do have a question, you're more than welcome to, to offer, to ask us. As Suzanne, we had a slide up there. I just want to also encourage you that if this is kind of you're new into your caregiving experience, or you're experiencing some of the feelings and emotions or perspectives that Suzanne's shared, we're here for you. You see our helpline number there, 646-744-2900. You can give us a call. You can schedule a time to talk to one of our navigators, to share more about your experiences and to learn more about some of the resources that we do have available here at CaringKind or elsewhere for your particular situation. I'm conscious of the time, and so I do want to, if people have questions, feel free to to raise a hand or to share, to take yourself off, to show yourself on video or to ask your question off mute, that you're welcome to do that. And while we're waiting for folks, or Suzanne, you said a couple things. I appreciated the idea of taking care of yourself, but that's hard to do.
Yep.
I think you highlighted a few practical ways to do that at the end, again, about it being a team sport, saying yes, coming up with, some specific things that you can offer to people who are more than willing to help.
Yes.
And I think also, do you want to share a little bit about, you talked early on about sharing your emotions and kind of allowing yourself to experience your griefs, and that can be hard to do with people who aren't going through that. And I'm wondering if you want to share a little bit about some of the experiences that you've heard from folks in support groups, or what you find, how are the ways to do that when
Mhm.
it's not common?
Right. I mean, I think one of the most one of the things I hear the most from people that have decided to join a support group is that it counters the sense of loneliness and isolation that they may feel as care partners, because all of a sudden they are creating a community with other people that can understand what they're going through and that have similar experiences and thoughts and feelings about being a care partner. And they're doing that in a setting with a trained facilitator that can create a safe space and can allow people to share these emotions in a space that's not judgmental,
Mm.
um, where they can feel safe to explore the many thoughts and feelings that they have about being a care partner, in ways that can also help them a little bit to be compassionate with themselves, to give themselves some grace.
Mm.
I think, people feel uncomfortable sharing anger or fear or guilt, or that they're overwhelmed, because we're all striving to be so perfect. But I think that often when people join a support group, they find that forum of other people that are going through the same, and that can give support. Um, but also they can do the same for others.
Mm.
And I think it can also be a way to get to learn about new approaches that they maybe haven't thought about, that other care partners may have discovered that they can share. And it can help members, like, just forming a human bond again. We know that care partners are very isolated, but all of a sudden now they are maybe experiencing a sense of community being with other fellow human beings that they can trust and that they can bond with. And then, they can ask questions of each other and maybe try to create some meaning out of all of it. And maybe it can create like a little bit of a new lease on life, create some hope, knowing that, they have this group that they can go to, and talk to others that are going through the same.
I think that that's very helpful and really true. You talked early on about, that there are new skills you have to learn, like patience. You
Yeah,
know, it's patience isn't something that we think that we can, it's not something that comes to mind as a skill that you can learn. And I do think that, when you have those opportunities to hear other people's experience and to hear that kind of what I'm going through is normal and that I don't need to feel guilty or bad about the fact that I'm feeling angry or
right.
guilty,
Or
just
feeling guilty or bad about not always being perfect, about trying to be patient, but not always accomplishing it.
right.
It's, as a human being, as a care partner, once, you're going to lose it sometimes, and you can share that with the group, and that's okay.
Mm.
But you're working towards getting better at it.
I think that the other thing that you said that I know that is a struggle for me is, feeling like you're doing a good job, like
Right.
being able to pat yourself on the back. That doesn't ever feel like something that's easy to do in this realm. But when you're around other people, they can do that for you until you can recognize a bit of that in yourself. So I think that that's, how some of the growth comes as well.
Yeah, and often in the support groups, people share how many times they've failed,
Mm.
that they didn't do this or they didn't do that, but they learned from somebody else or they learned over time. They gave themselves some grace, to just to get some more skills. And we have a program here that can also help care partners build skills, give them a little bit of a toolbox, to react in some of these situations that I described, keeping it safe and simple, and
Mm.
um, the patience, and, the affirming, acknowledging, and redirecting. I mean, those are things you have to practice.
Right, right. I did, in the chat, for those of you who are on the Zoom, I did put some notes in the chat. We have a couple of lectures that have occurred here. So Dr. Shaw, who um, talked about the 8 central needs of caregivers that Suzanne touched on. We have a recording of him. He did a lecture for us last year, and so I put the link, that's on our YouTube channel. And then also Dr. Kenneth Doka, who was here recently, did a talk for us on grief and understanding the grief experience for families who are in this realm. And so those might be 2 resources for those of you who are on the Zoom to check out on our website or on our YouTube channel.
Can I ask
Mm.
a question?
Absolutely.
So, is it possible to send them on an email? I don't know how to get it from here to an email. The
Um,
link.
yes, and actually, if you just go to our website, the
Uh-huh.
caringkind.com website, you can go through, if you go through to some of the education videos, you'll
Hmm.
get to our YouTube site.
Okay. How about Rochelle? Rochelle, how about your to schedule with Dementia Navigator? What is that?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm gonna pin
Oh,
my phone.
sorry, Michelle.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
So our dementia consultations that we have with the bookings, that is a link that I sent, and you can have a consultation with a dementia navigator to just kind of go through what a presenting challenge might be. If you want to learn more about Caring Kind programs, we can kind of talk through what's going on and then see where we can help out with our resources.
And for anyone who hasn't participated in partnering together, it's just amazing. And I actually had that Zoom right before this. I had to cut that one short to join this. And I want to say, Suzanne, this was phenomenal. Thank you so much for putting this together.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for those comments. Really appreciate it. I want to make sure, actually, Suzanne, can you go to the previous slide? If you can back up one. Just want to see, we've got
Which
there you
one
go.
is it?
So
No, hold on.
this is a good way to connect with us as well. So there's our phone number. You can always call and we'll get you direct, or if you send an email to helpline@caringkindnyc.org, that's also a way that, we can get in touch with you. But if you go to the website, fill out the form. We don't sell your information or anything like that. That's the easiest way to get connected to us, or just give us a call and we'll get you the resources that you need. All right. Suzanne, thank you so much for putting this together. Lots of a wealth of information. Thank you for those of you who've joined us this evening. We're coming on the holiday season, and so I hope that you all have some time to get a little bit of rest and relaxation and some holiday cheer as we head into the end of this year and the new year. So thanks so much for joining us tonight, and have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for joining. Thanks.